Hey guys, it's Nico Pintoa, and today I want to talk about negotiation. One of the things that's overlooked for artists, especially from students or newcomers, is that they don't really think a lot about negotiation. Negotiation is a necessity, especially if you want to become a successful freelancer, or if you want to start your own business, and maybe a studio. Negotiation requires the amount of work needed for a certain piece of work, a job, and most importantly, self-value. It's a hard one to talk about because it does require some business skills, and it's mixing business skills and putting value in art, which can be subjective due to style, direction, and other factors. So why is negotiation important? Well, duh, you need money to survive. It pays for food, it pays for shelter, bills, health stuff, and it's also needed to pay off the tools needed for work, such as traditional art mediums, software licenses, and even hardware. Having good negotiation skills means that you're getting paid fairly for the work that you're doing, that you're making a living out of it, you're saving more than you're losing, and you can stand up to yourself if someone tries to lowball you. So I'm going to start with two examples, Studio A and Studio B. Both studios do a 1-minute animated footage, fully produced, fully animated. Basically, they both do the same amount of work and the amount of production value for this certain footage. Studio A gets paid $10,000 US. Studio B gets paid $50,000. So what gives? What's going on here? Aside from money and numbers, there's a lot of factors that we have to consider. Maybe Studio A is based in a country where living expenses are low. Maybe they had a lot more creative freedom and a lot more time to produce this animated footage. Or maybe the client isn't a big name or a big corporation. Therefore, that client might have little budget. And then let's talk about Studio B. Maybe Studio B is based in a place like California, Los Angeles, where living expenses are pretty high. Maybe the client is a major corporation or a big name. They could have been tight in deadlines, or they had to make a lot of revisions. It could be an ensemble of well-known animators and artists who may be expensive. But whatever the circumstances or factors are, the studios and the clients agreed to the final outcome of the payment. But it's not just agreeing to an offer, there's a lot of counter offers. There's back and forth emails. There's planning. Therefore, there is an art of negotiation happening on the table. Everyone has gotten paid differently in terms of amount, but they've also gotten paid differently in terms of how they distributed the rates. So the different rates I can think about are hourly, daily, and weekly. Some people have used monthly, but there are other popular options like increments, installments, or one-time payments. I usually give my hourly and weekly rates because I feel like that's the most safest for me and my client. That's usually on the negotiation table whenever it comes to full-time jobs and studio work. So it's definitely something I'm more familiar with. I would say start with hourly rate to see how they feel, or if you know that you're not going to spend a full day on it. So let's say you decide to work on this piece for, let's say, 3 hours a day, or you can get it done under a day. If you see yourself working the full day, so let's say 8 to 9 hours, that's when I'll consider day rates. I would use weekly rates if you see yourself working for 40 hours plus per week. I usually don't involve the weekends here. If you must, just involve the hours. Some people get paid bi-weekly, but they usually refer to the weekly rates for the calculation of the bi-weekly pay. I personally do not use monthly rates, especially when it comes to unseen circumstances or holidays during that month. I feel like monthly rates are best for people who are offering services or access to something, but that's a completely different point. I don't really try to offer one-time payments or increments unless the client really wants to know that, because there may be unseen circumstances within the project, like I would underestimate the certain time and amount of work needed for a certain stage within the project. So when a client asks this, I usually give an estimate and a range, and an estimate of how much each stage would cost. But to protect both yourself and the client, I think the previous strategies are better for that. As for determining an exact number for that, that's always a tricky one. If you want to be paid Animation Guild rates, look up the Animation Guild rates through the Animation Guild website. I'll also offer the link down below, since this is what most employees here in California, Los Angeles are being paid. Which actually may be high for employers that aren't part of the union, or aren't willing to pay union rates. However, you should establish a personal bare minimum that allows you to save and gain. One way is to make twice more than your total loss and liabilities. I would say calculate how much you spend for bills, housing, other utilities, and calculate a rate where you can make twice more than that, so that you're saving more than you're losing. Or you can use that money for incentives, so treating yourself out to a nice dinner. I sometimes like to think about my hourly rate worth the price of 5 meals. Or maybe your day rate is a PlayStation and a half, bro! But one thing for sure is that you don't want to lowball yourself. You don't want to underestimate the amount of work that you need to do. And if you want to charge really high, which I encourage everyone should do, like start charging high, is double the rate that you came down to. And the whole point of negotiation is that you offer something high and then your client goes, okay, that's too expensive. How about we go for something like this? And then you guys are going to work your way towards a middle point where you both are satisfied, leading to counter offers and deals. That's what negotiation is all about. Just let your client know that you're open to negotiation in the first time you give your offer or your rate. There may be clients who will just not respond, and clients may think that you're too expensive and therefore they'll just drop you on the spot. But you have to go in there willing to accept that is a circumstance that will happen. And if that does happen, you can do other things that are more worth your time. Or if you really wanted to work for this client, remind them that you're open for negotiation. Ask them more about what their budget is and see how that round of negotiation goes. But if it's something that you're not happy with, don't try to force it. Find a standard for yourself. Put a stop loss order for yourself. If the pricing goes way below your bare minimum, don't accept it. But again, there are other factors that can affect the overall price, the payment, and the offer for our gig. And let's look at those factors and how each of those can be affected. Let's look at demand. How much are you desired? If you're getting a lot of offers from everywhere and people want you, feel free to start charging high because people are bidding for you and your work. Let's talk about experience. Someone who's had more than 5 or 10 years in the industry are more likely to be paid higher, and might also fall in the same category of having other projects available for them because of their previous connections with older clients and other connections. Then there's sheer skill. Clients want you because of your skill, obviously. There are students way better than myself and many professionals working in industry. They're highly skilled, but not a lot of them have experience or an idea of what negotiation is like. So clients and companies tend to lowball skillful people who don't understand negotiation. So if that happens, justify why your skills are important, why you deserve the rate that you asked for, and why you're one of the only few that can do this job. Then there's scale and production value. How much work do you have to do? How much work can you supply for your client? More work or more complicated work needs more pay. More simple and economic work requires less pay. There's time. Time is probably one of the biggest factors when it comes to negotiation too. If there's a really tight deadline, I'll probably charge higher, since their urgency becomes my priority for their schedule and my schedule. If it's more lax and flexible, I would be easy charging lower. Then there's revisions. I would put this as part of production value, but I think there's a lot of things to talk about during revisions. Revisions are also an unseen circumstance in a project where a client wants you to make certain changes, and that's why a lot of freelancers tend to charge really high too, because of the possible revisions. However, freelancers have made contracts where the client has to sign an agreement where they shouldn't have to make revisions, and if they do, they have to pay much higher. So if you're about to accept a gig, ask how many checkups there are, how many meetings, and how much revisions there might be. There's freedom and artistic liberty. How much free choice do you have in the overall execution? If the client wants to be very hands-on, I would probably charge higher. This kind of falls in the same category as revisions. Then there's the client themselves. Are they a very prolific individual, or are they someone more low-key? Or are they a corporation themselves? Anyone that's prolific or a corporation, I would charge higher because they can pay it. Anyone that's more low-key might not have the budget for that. This could also be people who are my friends that I actually want to do work for, but I would still charge them fair. Then there's scratch or template. Are you starting entirely from scratch, or do you have something to work with? Are they supplying you an animatic with layouts and backgrounds, or do you have to do everything by yourself from the storyboard phase until the final product? Anything where you have to do everything from scratch, I would charge much higher because those are a lot of stages to figure out still. Is it assisted or is it done entirely by yourself? This is kind of closely related to my last one, where you could be working off someone else's art or background. But again, if it's done entirely by you, charge higher. Even if you get to choose your own team and you have to hire other people to do those other stages, I would still charge higher because you're making all those decisions. But if you're just part of the gear and the client is actually looking at other people for other parts of the project, then you don't really charge higher for that. Usage of the production. Is it for advertisement or is it used privately? Is it going to be used where the commercial success for it is going to be high? Or is it used for a one-time thing where it won't get a lot of eyes? Anything for advertisement, commercials, or if it's part for a really big project that might go somewhere, charge higher. Then there's credit. I feel like credit does play a huge role, especially for finding talent, making a name for yourself and your brand. Credit and exposure are important for finding future work. Credits are important for future clients to find you. To me, credit plays a huge role because I had to deal with a lot of visa applications where I had to put my name and credit and my role in a lot of documentations, which helped a lot for immigration. So if they aren't willing to give me credit and restricting me from sharing the overall footage on my social media or any other outlet I use, I charge ridiculously high. I value credit really high, but even if they are willing to give me all the credit, I'll still have to charge them because I do believe that work needs monetary payment. I think payment with just exposure alone is bullshit. Exclusivity. Sort of related to my last one. If I'm not allowed to distribute it or share it or whatnot, I'll have to charge higher. If there's less eyes on it, I'll have to charge higher. Now finally, there's overall responsibility. You can direct the animation itself, the design, etc., the visuals for the project. But then there's also accounting for the money, there's production management, there's having to deal with the technical side of the production. If I feel like they're asking me to overlook most of that, then I will have to charge higher. Some people may not have as much freedom or flexibility to really negotiate their rates. One advice I'd like to give is to understand your own personal goals. For myself, time is essential and is better spent on original projects and other opportunities that may lead to something like income. I don't want to keep working for other people. I want to invest more time in original projects or things that I personally want to do. I'm okay with my financial situation. I have other means of getting financial income such as teaching, passive income, small-time commissions, enough to allow me to give myself time to breathe even if I get let go from the studio I currently work at. And because I want to dedicate more of my time to personal stuff, I charge higher because I'm sacrificing that time for someone else's work. But if your goal is to accumulate as much money as you can by taking up many gigs from other people and you have no problem with getting a lot of gigs from many different people and just doing work for them, then at least you know what your goals are. Start thinking about what you want to do in the long term and start planning how these opportunities and these gigs will lead you to that future version of yourself. If you're still unsure about how to price your animation work for projects, ask advice from as many people as you can, people that you look up to, people who are experienced, and people from all over the world because they all have different answers. And in that way you can sort of find a median or conclusion of what best suits your personality and your lifestyle and your goals. One thing you can do is seek professional advice in the numbers that you should get paid. You can have them look at your work and get advice from them and how to charge for the work that you can do. But it also comes down to experiences. Sometimes you'll have to make hiccups in terms of negotiations. I've done that in the past. And from that, you learn. You start preparing yourself and how you can charge better, fairer, and eventually much higher. I feel like negotiation is something that I still have to talk about more since I'm only scratching the surface in this video. And how to determine the prices of how much you should charge for animation work such as fully produced animated stuff. Anyways, thanks for listening. Bye. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.